Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Student of the Game. I am not your host, Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. We're here. It's the NFC East preview. No, don't adjust your sets. This was planned. Don't panic. Nobody panic. It is the Huddle Up podcast. We're invading the Student of the Game this week because Student of the Game Kyle Nash is away, and because he's a fool, he entrusts us to do this job for him. But nonetheless, we are here, and you can subscribe to the Student of the Game podcast on all podcast platforms. You can subscribe to the Huddle Up podcast on all platforms as well. If you want to get Huddle Up podcast merchandise as well as the Student of the Game t-shirt, you can do that over at our Huddle Up podcast TeePublic store. You can get the Huddle Up podcast on YouTube and hit the link tree on all platforms. We are live tonight on Facebook and YouTube. Apparently, and I did forget about this, that Twitter X, whatever the hell Elon Musk wants to call it this week, you have to have a premium account to broadcast there now. So we'll be going back to Twitch for the Huddle Up podcast when we start going live in August. Because if you think I'm paying Elon Musk for anything, you're out of your.
Good friends.
You're out of your mind. Okay, we got to get this out of the way. We got to watch the language because we are on Kyle's platform, so we have to be behaved. Because I almost dropped the GD. I don't know if that's allowed. I forgot to clear certain words with Kyle. But EJ, I'm looking specifically.
I'm good.
Be on your best behavior.
We're 3 minutes in and he almost already dropped three of them. What do you mean?
I remember that.
That means you can't say.
You're really loud, Sean.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy. Awesome.
Yeah, really,
that's
really
better.
loud.
That's better.
That's good, though. Better than last time when I had no audio.
Came in hot.
So, yeah, you were coming a little bit hot. But let's go around the room. We'll start right next to me. He is on loan from multiple platforms on the Huddle Up feed. He comes from Vegas last week. Now goes through our nation's capital. Eventually, he'll settle in.
Just win, maybe.
But eventually, he'll settle in to his home in Cincinnati. But Mikey B, Mike Bernier, how you doing, bud?
Hail to the Red Tails. Sorry, Commanders. I've left Las Vegas. I've gone to our nation's capital. I believe on next week's show, I'll be talking about the NFC West with Kyle when he comes back. So to say that I am going to know a lot of teams prior to getting back home to lovely Cincinnati, I couldn't have picked a better week to be with you guys. So let's have a fun one.
All right. And our resident alleged New York Giants fan, Ernest EJ Christian.
Allegedly.
How we doing?
That's rude, man. It's July. Come on.
We got to get warmed up. It's almost preseason.
Get the reps in now. Get the reps in.
Didn't the Texans started camp or something, or some sort of mini
Couple
camp?
teams, I think, started camp today.
So, we got to get loose. We got to get with it, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Went to the pool for a couple hours. I'm good.
Good. Brag about it. Going down below us to the first of the two Philadelphia Eagles coverage. Matt, how we doing?
Doing well, just because I've been keeping up with Hard Knocks. I'm very thankful that the Giants front office is not the Eagles front office.
That you're correct on. I'll give you that. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not kidding on that one. I mean, not that I have much room to talk as a front office, but even still,
always get worse. Jim.
It always can. And then also covering the Eagles, Sean, how we doing tonight?
Doing great. Coming to you from the Tampa Bay down here. Going with the Lane Johnson kind of do going on today. So, kind of celebrate everything. But, it's a nice night, minus the mosquitoes, which will probably devour my legs as I sit here. But we're going to get through it. We're going to do a little outdoor football preview for you.
All right. Well, do it while you can. And then, of course, I'll be covering as reluctantly as I can my Dallas Cowboys and seeing what they're going to do this season. But guys, let's jump into the first part. I know we're going to do this a little bit differently than Kyle's been doing with his previews, but we're going to cover biggest offseason storyline. And Sean, we'll start with you with the Eagles. What do you think has been the biggest offseason storyline for Philadelphia this year?
Well, I think the big storyline for me out of Philadelphia is pretty much a lot of change without changing anything. To me, it's new coordinators. It's going out to be a free agency in the draft, bringing a lot of new names. But the thing that hasn't changed in recent memory, and I'd say right now it kind of goes across the board in Philadelphia, is there's kind of this commitment to success. Obviously, with the Philadelphia Eagles organization, like we will spend money, we will find guys, we will cut you loose if it's not working. This is a team that still wants to win. It's showing that like that one Super Bowl is not enough. And for me, to go out and to lose a guy like Jason Kelce and to retirement and to not focus on that on the offensive line shows that we have faith in what we've already done there. We have faith in that in the trenches on both sides, and then to realize, you kind of just check your checks and balances and say, well, Swift's gonna go somewhere else for a ton of money. Let's just go out and get someone we like even better. In Saquon Barkley, you realizing that the secondary needs adjustment, and you go out, you get guys through the draft and through free agency, bringing in a couple of obviously fairly high-profile rookies as far as defensive backs and Dejon and Mitchell, and you add that to the mix and the ability to shift guys to safety. I think that was the biggest need, and they addressed it. So, all eyes are on Sirianni, and I don't know if it's a show of confidence or just hey, let's get this done now, like this is a last chance kind of thing. But whatever the case is, they put all the pieces in place. A coordinator that was able to add to his system and that commitment to excellence. And the big changes for me, the draft and free agents. That's your big storyline. New page, same chapter. So I think that to me, that kind of change without changing is the big storyline.
Very good, Matt. Is the only like double coverage we have. What's your thought on the biggest storyline for the Eagles this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, beyond what Sean mentioned, the investment into the secondary was big, since that was a glaring hole for the team at the end of last season. And I think that the biggest storyline, though, coming in is going to be Saquon Barkley, how he can operate behind that offensive line. Given the loss of Jason Kelce, I know Juergens is going to slide over, and that he was kind of drafted as the heir apparent to Jason Kelce. So we'll see how quickly he's able to fill those shoes. But I think that the health of Saquon and his performance behind that line is going to be key. I also think a big storyline coming in and leaving now the offseason is just how quickly Howie Roseman wanted to lock up everyone to those long-term deals and make sure that core was in place for the next 3 to 4 years. So that's the Eagles' window now at this point, I would say. All your offensive pieces are kind of locked up for that 4-year window. Got a lot of youth on the defense. How does it all get put together with the new coordinators in place?
Yeah, I think you guys really hit the nail right on the head for Philly. They are really the premier team, not only in the division, as gross as it is to say, but also I think in the conference. When you go into the year, there's only one team out west that I think is really even super competitive with what the Eagles are going to be this upcoming year. I know there's teams in the north that probably want to like debate that, but I don't know that. I don't know that any of the teams in that division are gonna be that. I know what happened to Philly at the end of last year, but I think they addressed the pieces that needed to be addressed, and barring injury or sheer collapse, I think they are the premier team. Mike, EJ, thoughts on the Eagles before we move on to other teams and their storylines?
Well, I don't love for the Eagles, obviously, but I've been saying they have the best front office in probably the last 10 years in football. They have always managed to stay aggressive on the gas, even though they're one of the premier teams in the league the last couple of seasons. And you got to admire that. They just do the right things, and they don't rest on the laurels. So That's what I'm on an Eagles fan. Obviously, you got to give that front office a lot of credit. They do what they need to do to continue winning, and kudos to those guys for doing that.
All right, Mike B.
The disrespect of Man Campbell is real on this show. No, the Philly organization in itself has done everything that you would want as a sports fan to keep your team competitive, to keep your team in striking distance for a duration of time. A lot of teams say that you have a certain window. I think that doesn't really hold balance here with the Philadelphia Eagles, because a lot of teams' windows are when quarterbacks change. They went and they didn't have the drop off from when Carson Wentz / BD Nick Foles, because I don't want to say anything inappropriate here on the show and get Kyle in trouble.
I think you can say Foles. I think you can say Foles.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Go Foles yourself.
I mean, I think that's the way I look at it, is that they're consistent, and I think in a division that in the 90s was always super competitive, to be the team of the 2000s, and I think especially in this division, I think Philadelphia has that under wraps because of the way it's been for the last 10 plus years. I think that's a testament to ownership, management, getting the right guys in there to coach the team, getting the right guys in there to play the team. So definitely tip of the cap of the way that they've been able to keep themselves at the top or around the top of that division.
Yeah, very good. EJ, what's the biggest offseason storyline for the New York Giants?
It's one guy. What was that, Dwight? What was that?
Daniel Jones.
Bingo. It's hit or miss. They lost Saquon Barkley largely because they chose Daniel Jones the year before that to pay him the extension as opposed to Saquon Barkley. And now, with Saquon now being gone, of course, they decided not to tag him, not touch the market. And the Eagles, again, being aggressive, giving the money he was looking for. So this year is about Daniel Jones or bust. And you've been watching Hard Knocks. Obviously, the priority has been to secure, Daniel Jones as possible, secure enough weapons around him so that if this doesn't work, even with weapons they've drafted and whatnot, it's never going to work. So this is it. Because this year, if he's not going to step forward to be at least a viable quarterback moving forward in this league for the New York Giants, then they can get out the contract relatively clean after the season. So Daniel Jones it's hit or miss for Daniel Jones at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't had a chance to check out any of the Hard Knocks, the front office thing that they've had with the Giants, but I know there's been a lot. I mean, a lot of the storyline was around Saquon and their inability to get him signed, and was he offered a deal? Wasn't he offered a deal? What was he offered? It seems very odd, and it's something we've talked about on the show for the last couple of years when they're doing the franchise tag thing, but they're willing to pay Danny Dimes, and it does seem a little baffling what that front office is doing, and you're going to find out this year if the commitment to Jones is going to pay off or not.
It probably feels like the ownership forced their hand on that one. I don't feel like Joe Shane and Dayball actually wanted to do that. I feel like that was more of a Tisha Mauer decision on that one. So I don't know, because these not their guys anyway. Neither was Saquon.
And I think too they hit a point because of, and it's kind of a reality that I'm going to be facing as a Cowboys fan a year from now.
Yeah.
With guys in certain contracts and who's gonna be able to get paid and who isn't. I think it's a matter of, because of decisions that the Giants made, that they literally weren't able to match the market of what he was going to be able to get. So, Mike, thoughts on the Giants and their storyline?
I mean, I think there's other questions here. I mean, obviously Saquon is the 3-alarm fire where you're like, okay, the floor is lava. But it wasn't just him that left. Darren Waller retired. Then he put out a really bad rap album. Surprise, surprise. But the question here is, I don't know that it's Daniel Jones. I think to Giants fans, it's Daniel Jones because they think that this is a make or break year. Here's the issue. You were going to be bad if you had Saquon Barkley regardless, because he can't play offensive line. He can't play defense. Mm-hmm. I see the 2024 season for the New York Giants as the development of Malik Neighbors for whomever plays quarterback there next, because I don't think Daniel Jones is there next year. So if that's a trade for Kyler Murray, if that's a sign Rain Dakota Prescott in the offseason, if that's a make a move to trade for somebody else. Looking at you, Uncle Rico. I don't know. Drafting Quinn Ewers. All options, I think, are on the table here for the Giants. I think this is the end of the Daniel Jones era. So if I'm a Giants fan, I'm thinking more, what can I get from the pieces that are still going to be there next year? Because that's where I need to put my focus.
All right, Matt, thoughts on the Giants?
Yeah, I think it's kind of already been alluded to that this is now the Daniel Dimes era, more so than it ever has been before. And I guess we're still being careful what we wish for, because we were told years ago that Danny Dimes was the savior of New York, and it doesn't look like that's to be the case.
Who said that?
So, I don't know, some guy pretending to be a Giants fan on this show. Danny DeVito is still, Danny DeVito and Drew Lock are still there to kind of put the coals to the fire if need be. But I think going from Saquon to Singletary is just, you're pulling the rug out from under your $40 million QB. I like the draft pick of Neighbors right off the bat. I think that it's finally an actual weapon for Jones to have in that passing game. But is it enough? When we still have Slayton, who maybe trots out for half the games this season. The tight end situation's a mess, and the offensive line is still just an absolute nightmare. So I don't think they've put Danny Dimes in a position to succeed still, but I think that's kind of at this point their MO is, let's get through one more painful season and then we'll retool next year.
Yeah. They've only been saying that for a couple of years. Sean, thoughts on the Giants?
They stink.
Well, yes, they do.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. That was just one thought. That was the first one.
Sean, that hurt here for record. But, okay.
Good.
Thing sucks. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Hurts some diabetes, like I always tell Cal.
Yeah, EJ still talks about his feelings. He's not going to get the hint today, obviously.
No.
So we're just
it's only
going
July.
to keep moving
It's only
forward.
July, though. It's okay.
one step and one slap at a time. And no, as far as the Giants go, I mean, obviously, you brought in a potentially. I mean, there was obviously some talk that maybe there was a QB controversy in New York. Not with the kind of money you threw at Danny. I mean, the guy's got to get one more shot here at least. And, you're not going to switch that up. And no necessarily proven weapons beyond maybe Slayton, if you can call him one. A lot of young faces. That receiving core is a big question mark, in my opinion, for the Giants. If guys like Hyatt and obviously you went out and you got a proverbial number one in the draft, not to mention, you have a slot guy that you missed a lot of last year. But is in his second or third year. If those three guys can kind of mesh, and if Danny Dimes can come anywhere close to what the New York Giants thought he was worth, you might see some sparks on offense. I think if you're a Giants fan, you just hope that you don't regret Saquon not being there. Where like the offense is real good, but you're like, man, if we had Saquon, this would be the one. Because that's not gonna ring well. But yeah, I don't see the Giants, winning the division by any means. I don't see any major surprises. But I think the Giants could be better than we're joking about, and I think the Giants could, kind of come out ahead of the curve a little bit. But no, they're not there yet. They're hoping on kind of a wish and a prayer here and a reset, and that's just kind of the state of the franchise right now.
So when you say better than we're joking about, you mean like 1-16?
Yeah. Right. I mean,
Mike got 0-21 earlier. So I mean,
you got them.
Hang on the curve
you have
here.
them losing more games than they're playing at this point.
Oh no, they'll lose all three preseason games,
Exactly.
and they'll lose to the bye week.
And they've already lost in Hard
They
Knocks.
lost the draft.
Yes.
So
Lost the draft.
and by that I mean Dallas lost the
They
draft.
lose every episode of Hard Knocks.
A lot of L's there, guys. A lot of L's.
Hold them.
All the
Yeah,
L's,
I mean,
all
I think
the
the Giants. I mean, when I say they could wow people, I'm talking like 4 to 7 wins, and people will be like, "Wow, that's okay." You know what? That's as long as a few of them come against some like division opponents or like maybe one big win prime time or against a big opponent, like a surprise big, that kind of thing. I think, you could hang your hat on that and move forward. But I think if you're the Giants, you're just looking at like, okay, what pieces work and what pieces don't. We don't know if we have a plan, but we'll build one off of what we have. I think that's where they're at.
This 7 minutes is so depressing. Let's move on.
Well, we'll get to other depressing in a minute, but Mike, you're gonna apparently bang the drum for some surprises in our nation's capital this upcoming year. What do you have for the Commanders?
Hail to the Red Tails. Jaden Daniels will be explosive from week 1. He will be the starter from week 1. And this year, he has all the pieces around him. He's got a full-fledged number 1 in Terry McLaurin. They've added a couple of other pieces. Here's the deal, though. This team is going to go as one man goes, and it is the new head coach of the Washington Commanders. It's not Riverboat Ron anymore. It's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's going to build that defense, and he's going to keep them in games very ugly. It's what worked for them in Dallas. I mean, obviously, Jim can attest to that. I think this Dan Quinn defense is going to be a difference maker. I think this is going to be something where, okay, you have Austin Eckler, who they brought in. Him and Brian Robinson will do the same thing that they did in L.A., the Chargers running backs. They'll be out for 3 weeks. They'll play for 2. They'll be out for 3. They'll alternate. It's fine. It works. Don't draft them in your fantasy leagues. But I think the reality of the situation is this team is going to be explosive on defense. It has a bunch of athletes on the defensive side of the ball, and I get it. I looked at the key additions. Name that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's Bobby Wagner. Okay, I get it. It's not Legion of Boom Bobby Wagner, but it's a veteran who's going to be out on the field that could be the head of that defense to get the next steps going in the right direction for Washington. The problem that they've had the last couple of years is it's Riverboat Ron. He's just going to gamble. That's not who Dan Quinn is. Dan Quinn is a no-nonsense kind of guy, and I think that that's what Washington needs. New ownership group, new direction, still have Major Tutty out there dancing his ass off. Jaden Daniels, I might just go out on a limb and say that if he's not the rookie of the year, he finishes in the top 3, and I don't think it's close.
Wow. Okay. I think Washington will be better when you have a more disciplined coach, a defensive-minded coach. You turn the offense over. There's talent on that offense. Absolutely, they added pieces. They added multiple pieces on both sides of the ball from the Dallas Cowboys. Defensive players that know how to play for Dan Quinn and a center who's been very good in Dallas. So if they're improving in the places that struggled the most, you have a different mindset in the coach's room. Obviously the front office rebuild. There's been so many problems with this organization over the year that any sense of stability, which you finally have now.
Daniel Snyder being gone was level number 1.
Yeah, that, and
mission accomplished.
That solves a lot in and of
Praise
itself.
you, Jesus.
And then just adding the businessmen and the actual adults in the room there, I think is going to go a long way for Washington. Sean, your thoughts on Washington and what they have done this offseason?
Well, I think we've touched on it with the addition of Jaden Daniels. I think that's a tremendous add for them. I like the kid, and I think he's going to do great. I know that there's weapons in place there on the outside. I feel like Washington still has some work to do in the trenches. Maybe not on the defensive side, but I feel like that line has some question marks. And out of the backfield, obviously, we had some success there out of kind of just groups of guys, guys that whether through injury or getting shot, which that storyline is still baffling to me.
Yeah,
but guys coming in around, and I like Robinson a lot. I do. I feel like Robinson's still going to come into play there in Washington in the backfield. So I think the weapons are there. I don't know if I'm quite as hot on everything, as we just talked about. Obviously it's not my job to be, But kind of a more realistic thing. This is kind of like I feel there's a little more upside here than New York, but I do think those two teams, are going to be battling for 3 and 4 in this division. That's just kind of, I think a very realistic expectation between the two, team name and confusing team name changes aside, I think Washington's pointed more in the right direction than New York is. I just feel like, Jaden. I mean, we've obviously all been wrong on quarterbacks before. If Jaden Daniels doesn't work out, obviously, there's going to be a big back to the drawing board moment. But I don't think there's any reason why you would sit him at any point. So if he struggles, the team will struggle. If he's able to come in and take some pressure off that line by, getting outside the pocket, using his feet a little more, I think you could see some surprises here. And rebuild mode, but not complete reset mode for the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you and there's no reason not to. If you give the keys to Daniels to start the year, he's your quarterback unless he's hurt. Like there, you can't take him out. Matt, thoughts on Washington?
Yeah, I like what they did in the draft. Obviously, Daniels is the headline of what they did in the draft, and that's the smart pick for them. If you're restarting new coach, new coaching regime, pair that with a new QB, it makes the most sense. Still some questions on the O-line like we've talked about, but I don't think it's the mess that is like Chicago or New York's offensive line. It's probably more middle of the road. I like the addition of Zach Ertz as that veteran leadership team for a young core of receivers. And, the name that gets floated out a lot is Brandon Ayuk with the trade rumors and his demands. And Washington is one of the teams that's constantly tied to Brandon. And I think that addition would elevate Washington a little bit more than what we've talked about already, not just potentially a playoff team, but I think if you add that explosiveness to the young core of receivers they already have, then that makes Washington a pretty
if you're
fun and dangerous team.
Your receiver core is, Scary Terry and Brandon Ayuk. That's
Dotson.
If Brandon Ayuk happens, then everything I said about there could be some surprises. They're no longer surprises.
Right.
And I feel like that's a piece that all of a sudden pushes them into, if things go well, we could challenge for 1 or 2. I think you're all of a sudden in that talk. And normally I wouldn't say that about one guy, but I feel like that would be a piece that would push them closer to that point.
He's definitely a difference maker, playmaker. And, EJ, your Giants should be targeting him as well, but probably won't because that front office is probably like, Brandon who?
Not Brandon Jacobs, right? No.
Who is that?
There's a team in San Francisco now?
Yeah, I don't
Who
know.
knew?
Since when?
Who the hell is this?
Well, I don't hate the Giants. Well, I know on the Commanders, I don't hate the Giants front office because we don't know what they'll do with their groceries now. So we'll see. It's not my team.
EJ, thoughts on Washington?
It's Dan Daniels, and I'm impressed by the kid. From what I saw, actually connected to the Giants and Hard Knocks, episode 1, I believe, of this season of when they bring all of the guys in camp and during combine interviews and stuff. They brought Jane Daniels in for interview, and he seems very impressive and very mature, and it's a kid that looks like a week one guy ready to go. So it's Daniels a bust, obviously. Dan Quinn, Super Bowl coach, has some good credentials, obviously. Look, Commanders are, I know it's early to say these words, but Commanders always been frisky, somewhat, last couple of years. Yes.
Here we go.
Here we go. Yes, it's July.
You almost made me swear on Kyle's show. You almost made me swear on Kyle's
show. Don't think I missed your let's see what they do with their groceries line. If you try to make that your new catch.
You caught that, didn't you, right? It took you a little while. I thought you catch that at some point. No, but the NFC is not that
Stupid idiot.
Outside a couple of teams in the NFC, it's the wild card is kind of wide open. So Commanders, if they, as Sean said, a couple things here to get an Ayuk in a trade, they could be a 7 seed in the wild card. Who knows? So,
we will. Well, obviously, we'll get to our division standings prediction towards the end of the show. But now we go to Dallas, and the biggest offseason storyline: the Dallas Cowboys. No, but seriously, it really for me as a Cowboys fan, and I'm looking at it, and there's plenty to unpack on what this team did and didn't do. But I think that the biggest thing is you're heading into the final season, contractually speaking, of Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy, CeeDee Lamb. There's a lot of heavy hitters on this team that may not be here a year from now. I think a lot of it depends on what happens this year. A lot of it depends on Jerry Jones and what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do, because again, everything business-wise with the Dallas Cowboys runs through Jerry. So to me, that really is the big thing. That after the Trevor Lawrence contract, there was reports that Dak Prescott is going to want $60+ million a year next year. The Cowboys don't have that. And if they want any of the other pieces on this team that are important to the future of the Cowboys, this will be Dak Prescott's last year. I think this will be Mike McCarthy's last year. So the Cowboys and this group, you lost Dan Quinn, you lost a lot of pieces, you added very little. Zeke back in town, Eric Hendricks, and who's the third one? Royce Freeman are the three additions to the Dallas.
I was just looking at that now. Royce Freeman.
Yeah.
Big name.
So
big back.
Yeah, big back. You lose Pollard, which, the Tony Pollard starting running back experience was not as good as we thought it was going to be. So you bring back Zeke, one of your worst offensive linemen in recent memory, and not much else.
That's right.
So I just, honestly, we'll get to predictions, like I said, in a little bit, but it really, this is probably the lowest I have felt going into a Cowboys season. Like this is usually when hope lives in Big Jim. I don't even have much of that right now, to be honest with you.
And honestly, good.
Is Deuce Vaughn still on the roster?
I think he is. Yeah.
According to
No, but they're
ESPN, he's
rumored
their
to be
third
looking
string.
at Vincent Vaughn.
Might as
Well,
well.
he was a
Jim,
top prospect at
Jim,
Notre Dame.
that's a good thing though, because it keeps your expectations a little leveled now.
This
You know
is
what I'm
true.
saying?
I mean,
this
Jim's
is not
never been overly high on the Cowboys, no
Right.
matter what. So I don't think his expectations have ever been.
This is the Hershey. This is not the
reasonable.
Hershey Bears, buddy.
I got my
Okay.
Bears.
Well, hold on.
Baseball
Hold on.
teams are good.
Jim isn't every other Cowboy fan. He's not the one on Twitter. We them boys. As soon as training
First off, I
camp
don't think I've
starts,
ever tweeted that. By the way,
going thinking that they're going to win the Super Bowl 74 weeks before it happens.
No.
Jim looks at it like a guy who actually knows what he's talking about and does more than just type letters on Twitter. No.
Look, there will be times when I get hyped. I will.
He's a little
There are
bit
times
dramatic.
when I start feeling feeling good, and then they are very quick to
Michael,
remind
he's a
me
little
who they are.
dramatic. What?
Sure, but guess what? I've done it.
Right. That's just being a fan.
Joe Burrow takes me to the Super Bowl his second year. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, here's the window, boys. We're going to kick that thing in. And I can't get him to stay healthy. You don't think I'm sitting here waiting with I got the sky is falling tweet saved in my drafts when he starts 2-2 and it's like, did Joe Burrow play any snaps in the preseason?
Do you remember the segment last year we did on the show when you guys
Yeah, the
were
one where we all
3-2?
picked him to win the Super Bowl and I told you guys, thanks, guys. There's no shot that we make it in the playoffs. Yeah, I called that.
No, but when the Cowboys were 3-2, just after the loss of the Niners, and Jim went apoplectic on Twitter and then on the show itself, and I told him to calm down. They're gonna win 12 games still. And you're like, no, and no.
And where'd that get them?
12 wins, right?
But where'd that get them?
Well, again, I can't.
Wow,
And
EJ just wants to highlight that he was right.
I can bring the horse to the water. I can have you drink in the playoffs. I mean, that's on
it
you
happens
guys.
so little, EJ. Yes, you were right. It happens very little on this show,
Wow.
so I will give you the credit there. But again, it meant nothing because you had yet another huge embarrassing failure.
Got you
where
to
you
the
vomited all
water.
over
You got to drink.
Kyle, edit that part out. His head won't fit in the screen anymore.
Mike, real quick, we'll go around the room. Mike, thoughts on the Cowboys and their off season?
I mean, it felt like it was a status. It was one of those things where, like you said, you have guys that are going to want contracts, so you have to make your choices. Is it pay CeeDee Lamb now? Is it pay Dakota before somebody else resets the market. Looking at you, Miami, probably giving $55 million to Tua Tagovailoa for whatever reason. Cool. But I look at it, and there was going to come a time where you weren't going to be able to make moves because you inevitably have to get yourself into a spot where you're not negative in cap space anymore. Here's the deal. Leighton Vander Esch, when he signed his contract extension, everybody thought it was a great idea. Nobody knew Leighton Vander Esch was going to have a career-ending injury. And all the dead cap. He has the dead cap from Zeke's first contract because, you kicked him to the can. So it is what it is in that regard. I don't necessarily know that there was anything that was out there free agency wise, with the exception of one Derrick Henry, that if you guys signed, I'd have looked up and been like, they're leaps and bounds better than they were last year. I feel like you're just running back what you had. It got you 12 wins. You're down a couple of pieces, but you drafted a couple pieces. And Zeke did look better in New England. And like you said, the Tony Pollard experience did not work. So you got rid of it. You brought Zeke back. You got Rico Dowell. You got Deuce Vaughn. You have Royce Freeman. And here's the deal. There's going to be somebody that's going to sit in free agency that is going to be available that's going to sign for next to nothing. I talked about it last week when talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. Michael Thomas. I get it. It's a foot thing. It's been a foot thing. It's going to be a foot thing. But if you can get him for $2 million for a season and you can put him with CD and he takes the spot of Michael Gallup, it's not a bad thing. There are still pieces out there that I think could make this offense even better. I think the biggest question mark here is how does the defense go without Dan Quinn being the guy now? I think that's my question for Dallas. Not the players, the coaches.
Yeah, and there's some think that the Cowboys kind of hit a wall with Dan Quinn defensively. So I know there was a lot of pieces got hurt last year, so you should have some of those returning as well.
And you're getting Diggs back healthy to pair up with Deron Bland, who played out of his mind.
Yeah,
last year. So, I mean, maybe the secondary will be a smidge bit better and Dak won't have to score 74 points a game to win.
Yeah. I mean, Stephon Gilmore was really good, but you don't want a 40-year-old to have to be your best guy in the secondary at the tail end of the season. But EJ, thoughts on the Cowboys offseason?
Well, they didn't do anything really at this point. They're going to be relatively the same roster with the core players roster next year. Obviously, healthier Diggs obviously going to help a lot. This feels like this is it. This feels like this is the all-in year with this crew.
Yeah.
If they don't, at the very least, get to an NFC title game, do you sign Dak to extension? I don't know.
Not if he won $60 million.
I mean, that's the thing. Are you okay with resetting the whole thing now? Because that's
who else is a free agent? Who else is a free agent next year?
That's the thing. That's the more question. Do you? Because Dak has been good. It's been good enough to be good enough, but Dallas Cowboys good enough.
I'm just saying. If you're telling me it's Dakota's out and you're replacing it with Kyler Murray or somebody along those lines, is that really an improvement?
No, not at all.
Well, no. Here's the thing. I think if Dak is gone after this year, it's either because you've seen Trey Lance in your room for a year and 3 quarters and you decide we're going to give him a try, or you're going young. You're drafting somebody and trying a basic rebuild from there. So, Matt, thoughts on the Cowboys?
Yeah, like everyone said, it's kind of status quo, and part of that status quo is Jerry kind of playing chicken with his free agents or his players who are looking for contracts and deals, and eventually Jerry just kind of caves anyway. So I've never really understood the logic of let's see where the market plays out, and then we're just going to pay the market anyway. So what they're doing with CD right now doesn't really make sense. They had an opportunity to get out in front of some of the other larger contracts that were handed out to tier 1 receivers this offseason, and they did not. So it's a little bit more of the funds that'll be taken away from Rain moving forward potentially. But I think that it's just kind of interesting that the last time this band was together, it was a pretty successful run for them in terms of offensive numbers. So if the defense can be better than they were last year with the returning players and the offense can replicate past successes, I don't think that this is necessarily terrible season for the Cowboys. And silver lining, for Sean and I as Eagles fans, if the worst case scenario, Cowboys do win it all, Jim has promised to let his hair grow out from that Super Bowl win until the start of the next season. So we do have that going for us if it should happen.
Yeah, I think this will be, because that was I think we discussed that on 3CT. So
we did.
This is the first time my wife is hearing about this. So I'm sure
I'll
get questions about that. But Sean, the thoughts on the Cowboys.
Uh-oh.
Well, I mean, I think, everybody's talking about not a lot of moves. I talked with the Eagles about how it was kind of like changes without a change in mindset. And I think in Dallas, it kind of became complacency without a change in mindset. Obviously you have some contract woes and things coming up, and you gotta play to that, and so you didn't have a ton of money to work with. But I think a lot of Dallas's storylines are going forward. I feel like the offseason isn't a huge storyline, other than obviously Jerry Jones, as opposed to Lurie's kind of commitment to winning and commitment to the city and commitment to like a great product and those kind of things. Dallas already built a pretty good product, but I think the differing mindset may have to do with what a good product means. Whereas, to Philadelphia, for it to be a good product, it better look good and it better put up wins. In Dallas, I think Jerry Jones has made it very clear that a good product makes money.
Yeah.
And I think even if that's not the biggest piece of that ownership, that's definitely a huge piece. And I think when you're looking at what's profitable versus necessarily what's successful, even if it's in the discussion, because most cities, it's success is profitable. In Philadelphia, success is profitable. If you're winning, people are showing up. Look at the Phillies this year versus last year, right? Selling tickets and merchandise like they haven't sold in years, right? So, in some cities that works. And in Dallas, it probably would, but Jerry's not going to try that. He's just going to keep looking at where the money is. And so I think your big storylines and a big interesting one for Dallas, you talked about Dak, is like if it's not going, if the defense isn't working, if the defense is giving up points, if the offense comes out sluggish or if Dak doesn't look great, is there a point where you kick the tires on Trey Lance before this season's over? You've already declined his fifth-year option. So you're going forward, I think that sets up an opportunity to be like, let's look at him. And if we need him, we'll pay him. And if not, we'll just cut him loose. And so that, they've already committed to not putting him there in the future. And an interesting storyline for Dallas would be watching what Tony Pollard does. I feel for me, it has nothing to do with Dallas doing great or not. But I feel for Dallas, it's if Tony Pollard has a very successful season and the running backs behind the offensive line in Dallas don't, then you start to have these questions on offense and questions in the ownership. Like, did we just not use him? Did we not see it? Were we just too banged up? It's like you start to question and then you're on the verge of like a reset and they may be anyway. But for Dallas, I think it should be business as usual. It should be a successful offense. It has great pieces on defense. They should be vying with Philadelphia. Hopefully, only until about week 12 or 13. But we expect them to be there at the end, at least some realm of playoff contention or something like that. But I think there is that risk as players age and the contract years and things like that, that like this could be the start of something different.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't necessarily know that I'm all in on the Tony Pollard talk because he's going back to what he was doing with Zeke. He's splitting carries. It's Tajay Spears is going to get just as many, if not more, carries than Tony Pollard in Tennessee. So I don't necessarily.
But I think there's a chance he may see as many carries because there was a lot of games in Dallas where he just wasn't getting the carries. They were would falter early or they had some rough rushing numbers in the first few games, and there was a point I think about 5 or 6 games in where I was talking to James on the phone and Jim, you'll verify this. I was like, do they just not know how to run the ball? Like,
yeah, they did.
And they were banged. He was telling me, no, they're banged up on the offensive line. They were having issues with that.
Weren't they more pass happy anyway last year?
Yeah.
In comparisons to past years.
But I mean, in Tennessee, I guess the look of them is that they will probably be pass happy as well. So you're right. He'll probably be splitting a carries with Spears, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a hot hand thing, and if he's the hot hand, Dallas is going to look a little silly.
He had 252 carries last year. He averaged 4 yards a carry and had 1,000 yards. I mean, it's a nice number, but I don't think that it's what you want from your number one running back.
Right. I think the bottom line is that this Cowboys team, health withstanding, is still a 10 to 12 win team. No problem with that. It's about the playoffs, and I don't see anyone else. Maybe Philadelphia with the Saquon acquisition, of course, could separate a little bit. But outside of that, I don't think anyone else really separate themselves from the rest of the pack in NFC that Dallas could not compete with to at least get to the Final Four of the NFL. So
I just want to clarify on the I think maybe what we were discussing is it was misunderstood. I think the Tony Pollard, it's less to do with total numbers and using him correctly. I feel like with Tony Pollard, I think what I'm looking to see and what I think would be funny for me, not necessarily for Jim or Dallas, is were they just using him incorrectly? Were they running the wrong schemes? Were they is there something where per carry averages, if he comes out with 50 less carries and averages 6.5, 7 yards carry, something nonsense like that, it's going to look silly. Now that would be a big jump.
I think to your point,
but
too,
I'm just
Sean,
curious to see if in a system that's different, if he looks better and he looks more spry, and maybe he earns a lion's share of the carries that we don't think he's going to get. That would be the kind of change where you start to go, well, what went wrong here, and why do we have Ezekiel Elliott again?
Well, I think you hit on a good point with that, and also with it's also going to be in sports media. They will compare it if Pollard looks good visually. Again, the thing with media and people that talk is a lot of times the loudest voices aren't going deep into the woods. So if Pollard, if he gets, a fourth of the amount of work that he did in Dallas, but he's getting double the yards per carry. And let's be fair, even Zeke's going to be the number one, but I don't think he's going to be the number one in terms of volume that he did, when it was his second and third year in the NFL. So if numbers wise, he's getting similar work to Pollard, and his yards per carry are much lower, and Tennessee's, and long shot, but even mildly competitive for a wild card spot in the AFC, and Dallas is struggling to be in a wild card spot in the NFC. There will be people, because anything about the Cowboys equals ratings. There may be people that talk about, well, maybe they should have just kept Pollard and brought in pieces around him.
I'm going to use the name because I heard it from Kyle and we're on his show. You really believe that the mayonnaise messiah is going to keep the Tennessee Titans within striking distance of a playoff spot in the AFC?
I mean, on paper they shouldn't, but I mean, there's no reason the Houston Texans should have won the AFC South last year. When we were sitting there in July.
I think that division's going to be very
Nobody in July last year was sitting here going, yep, Texans going to win the South.
Oh, no. No one did.
No, but to compare the fact of Will Levis versus C.J. Stroud, I would have taken No, but hold on.
I'm not comparing Levis to Stroud. I'm just making a point.
You used the Texans, C.J. Stroud out of college, greater than Will Levis at any point in his NFL career.
I'm not denying that. My point,
mayonnaise messiah.
Right, but you're missing the point. There is, I'm also not saying Tennessee's going to win the South. I'm saying, nobody was picking Houston to win the division last year. Nobody's sitting in July saying Tennessee is going to be competitive in the AFC. But we've seen crazier things that have happened. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
pass on.
First of all, Will Levis is not C.J. Stroud, but Will Levis is better than people think he is.
Well, and to be fair, and let's also be fair, if the Titans are competitive in the AFC, there will probably be more talk because of guys like Spears and Tony Pollard as opposed to Will Levis. But anyway,
I think it's more
it would be more because
of the other pieces they added. Didn't they add a number one wide receiver?
I don't know who they added. We're not talking about the Tennessee Titans.
We're talking about the NFC East here, folks.
All right, let's move on. We've beaten a point to death. Next, we're looking at what's going to make this year successful. Mike, I'll start with you this time with Washington. And this time, we're these next two, we're just going to kind of roll with the people covering the team. We're not going to have a lot of back discussion on it. But Mike, for the Washington Commanders, what makes this year successful?
Development of Jaden Daniels. I think it's very simple. Get through the year healthy, develop well, stay competitive late in ball games. You don't have to win those games, just stay competitive. I think that's the key for Washington.
All right, EJ, what makes the New York Giants season successful?
Dan Jones has to be better than even 2 years ago. He has got to be clearly a clear better quarterback at any point of his career. If not, it's over. It can't be the same like leash like 2 years ago where Dayball's like holding him back, from throwing the ball as much. No, it's got to be. This is it or bust. Let the leash off. If he screws up, he screws up. Is what it is. So Dan Jones got to be way better than he's ever been.
Matt, what makes this year?
The bar is the floor there.
That's why the way better was the point. To be better, way better.
Matt, what makes this year successful for Philly?
I mean, I've said it before. There's no excuses for Philly unless there's a major injury this season. I think if they don't make it to at least the NFC Championship, I would say probably Super Bowl, then this is probably a down year for the Eagles, given what they added to both sides of the ball and the expectations in that city, especially for Sirianni. I think if they don't at least win one playoff game, if not two, we probably see a coaching change, given what we've seen from the last 2 years. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but given how quick the Eagles have been in the past to move on if the situation's not working out, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened.
All right, Sean, what makes this year successful for the Eagles?
Well, I think for the Eagles to be successful, you're looking at, my instinct says protect Saquon Barkley. I feel like, and that's a big one. You got to have the big boys up front. You got to make sure the run schemes are crisp. You want to make sure the lanes for him are very wide open. Maybe you sit him for the game in New York. God, if he hurts himself on that field, the one game we play there, I'm going to burn that place.
I'll be sad, for be honest. That'd be bad.
But, that's where I lean. I think that's a smaller piece than the other two that I have. I think the two biggest pieces are Philadelphia needs to lean on their coordinators. You brought in two fairly big names in Fangio and Moore. You have question marks at the head coach position, I think, at this point. And I think for him, he needs to lean on them. And I think for the players that have been brought in and the players on the field, they need to buy into the systems of those two guys and see how it works. If it's not working and Sirianni needs to step in or Lurie needs to come down and be like, it's your go, like fix this. And Sirianni gets a chance. I think to start, you just let those cogs work and see what happens. And I think the third piece for me, Jalen Hurts needs to reestablish himself as a leader. I think, there's been a lot of question marks out of the locker room. Like, is he a good teammate? Did he change after the big contract? I think there's been like some weird side talk about Jalen Hurts. I didn't notice it on the field, but the fact that anyone's chirping about it, even if it's just made up Twitter X nonsense, Jalen Hurts just needs to come out and just like it needs to be very evident that the offense runs through him. And I think not just from a on the field play kind of scenario. I mean, like, face after the game. And I think for Jalen Hurts, it's a chance for him to like take a step forward. Like, this is going to be the year where I'd like to see him, instead of just being like the best player and like, look, I'm the field general, like become the veteran now. Like this is the year where I'd like to see him transition into that more veteran quarterback role. And I think there's enough new guys on the offense for him to be able to do that.
You sure that's not from weirdo, whiny Philly fans that Matt hates saying that?
I follow a lot of things, and I only get to read things between nap times and bedtimes, and there's a lot of drinking involved. So I may be combining stories, but I think that there have been there's been talk of like kind of a diva, kind of behind the facade, like a diva backbone, kind of out of him. I didn't notice it. And I think the kind of the better reporters out there and like the better sources and media outlets, I'm not hearing it from them. But if anyone's noticing a diva persona, you can have a diva persona, that's fine. But like you need to like also, when it comes time, if I see it on the field, I need to know that everyone's looking to him. Kind of because you lost a guy in Kelsey. That was a huge offensive leadership piece.
That's
and I think you still have a Lane Johnson, not for very much longer probably. But beyond that, I don't think there's really anybody else out there clamoring to be that guy. And so Jalen Hurts needs to jump in and fill that void. And I think if those things all happen and Saquon's healthy and Hurts is the leadership and, the kind of the coordinators take control, I think I'm with Matt that this team is going to be hard to stop.
Yeah, for me, looking at the Dallas Cowboys, what makes this year successful, it's very simple. Get to the NFC title game for the first time since January 14th, 1996 or better. Literally, that's it. We have suffered as Cowboys fans. Me and EJ have suffered.
Calm down.
For if they don't do it this year, it will be 29 years since that day in January when they last made it to the NFC title game. And this team has won. This team has won like 6 playoff games in that time. So at least get there. At least give Cowboys, and that's the saddest part is like if they just like get to the NFC title game and lose, and then the whole bottom could fall out of this thing, and that's all we get. But literally, just give me some sort of hope that there's any possibility of grand illusion. That really is the core of it. All right. What makes this season unsuccessful? EJ, I'll start with you with the Giants. What makes this season unsuccessful? And your answer can't be them just playing football.
What makes this unsuccessful? The Giants.
The Giants make it unsuccessful.
Just being themselves for the last couple. Yeah. No. Their defense actually, their front seven not being as good as advertised. Get Brian Banks in the trade rather. So you got Banks and Thibodeau on the edges. You got Dexter Lawrence in the middle. That should help a lot. But if they don't play well this year, that will be the dam that breaks everything. Because I got a feeling the defense will be at least competitive this year enough to keep them in games for Daniel Jones to be able to win some games. If that falls apart, then there's no hope.
All right, Sean, what makes this year unsuccessful for Philadelphia?
Well, I think if it's going to be unsuccessful, it's going to come from probably one of two places. I think it would either be the defense faltering, like maybe some of the upgrades at defensive back not working. Maybe the rookies aren't ready. Maybe the safeties aren't enough, for support. And I know they're doing a lot to work corners into safety and get used to where coverage is going. Like Fangio's, got belief in these guys, but I think if that secondary turns out to not be as good as it looks on paper, that would be a point where the season could fall apart. And the other to me would be just kind of, I don't know, I want to say a lack of depth on offense. I mean, we're not near as bad as some other teams, but I feel like once you get behind Devontae Smith, I think there's a lot of question marks, where the third receiver is. Is Dallas Goedert going to stay healthy? Is he actually, are we going to use him like a one? Who's the guy behind him? When you're just kind of looking for that other target beyond those two guys, don't let it just be Saquon. You want to limit his touches, when you can. But I think that kind of lack of depth in the pass catching realm, or stopping pass catching on the defensive side of the ball, those would be the kind of risky spots for me.
All right, Matt, what makes this year unsuccessful for the Eagles?
Yeah, beyond any type of major health or injury, and I would say not even to like one person specifically. I think that the team is kind of set up offensively that they can play through that, but defensively, if they lose someone, a key piece from that secondary or from their front line, I think that would be kind of a loss. But I would say otherwise, we have 2 new coordinators. If things aren't clicking properly and we cut bait too soon, I think that could be a significant setback for the team, given that, all they've probably done in the offseason, during training camps, during preseason. If the first sign of adversity for either of those game plans, offensively or defensively, if Nick tries to step in too soon, I think that could kind of be a significant problem for the overall growth.
All right, very good. Mike, what makes this year unsuccessful in Washington?
I mean, obviously the cop out is the injury, so I won't go there. It'll be the defense not developing fast fast enough in a Dan Quinn defensive scheme. They got some dogs over there. Dante Fowler, who they brought over. They've added some other pieces, but it is a new defense. It is a new scheme. So I think the offense is going to be up and down as you would expect with a rookie quarterback. So I think they're leaning on the defense. So a defense that finishes in the bottom like 7 of the league, I think you have to look at it as they probably weren't in the game as long as they should have been. So I think you would look at that as more of a loss on the year if they have like a bottom 7 defense.
All right. For me, what makes the season unsuccessful? Anything less than an NFC title game? No. Really, and this is coming from somebody that understands it. When the Dallas Cowboys drafted Dak Prescott, when they did, that they were not planning on him being the next, franchise guy for the next, almost decade. But he ended up being that guy. He ended up being put in a position to lead this franchise. And he was given a lot of really good teams. Probably better on paper, any complete team than Tony Romo ever had. And for if this is his last year and they don't make it to the NFC title game, don't make it to the Super Bowl, don't win a Super Bowl, ending his tenure with the teams that they have had, and not getting a single Super Bowl appearance, I think makes not only this year but this period of time in Dallas Cowboys history dramatically unsuccessful. And I know that's a lofty expectation for a team that hasn't had much postseason success in a very long time, but it really does boil down to that, because his time there and the teams there were too good to not have at least gotten to that point. All right, now we move to the actual prediction phase of the show. So I know for me, and I know I told you guys ahead of time, I do have a best case scenario, worst case scenario for the Cowboys, and then an actual like realistic prediction. We'll do the team prediction first, and then we'll loop back around and do our actual like division standings. And if you have records on those as well for all 4 teams, you can hit those. But we'll do division standings last. But Matt, we'll start with you for this one. What do you have for the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2024-2025 season?
In terms of record? 13-4.
Okay. Sean, in terms of record, where do you have the Philadelphia Eagles?
I had them right at the same point, 13-4. I think that sounds very realistic there.
Very good. EJ, New York Giants.
I have them at 7-10.
Okay. All right. Mike.
I wasn't laughing at the prediction, but more Mike's reaction to it.
I mean, I'll admittedly laugh at both, but we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the full division standings. Mikey B, where do you have the Washington Commanders?
I'm gonna say that I think this team. I'm gonna go with 8-9. I think it's an improvement, a drastic improvement from where they were, and I think that it proves that a good quarterback can do you a ton of good.
For me, I have, again, this is absolute best case scenario for the Cowboys, which I don't think they'll get, is 13-4. My worst case is 7-10. But realistically, I think that the Cowboys fall in the middle of those two. I have them at 9-8, and I have them as a wild card 3, or they miss the postseason. and I think that's really where I'm at with the Cowboys.
Is that
I
because
thought
of
we
the
were coming back around for the worst case. I
I was
had
asking
Eagles
that.
worst case around
All right,
9 and
well,
8, 10 and 7, somewhere around there, and fighting for that wild card spot. I don't see us missing the playoffs this year.
There you go, Matt. Do you have a worst case for the Eagles?
Same, yeah. I would say 9 wins is probably a worst case scenario. Some closer. Some of the games I have predicted close wins for the Eagles. If they go the other way, I still think about 9, 10 wins.
All right, EJ, worst case.
Worst case is 3-14.
Okay. And Mike, worst case for Washington.
6-11?
Okay. Mike, do you have a best case for Washington?
10-7.
Okay. EJ, do you have a best case for the Giants?
If they can get through this early part of the schedule relatively unscathed, honestly, 10-7.
Stop stealing my answers.
That's absolutely best case scenario.
Stop looking at my paper, EJ.
Wait, you got 10-7 too? No way.
No, I just predicted 10-7 for the Commandos.
Oh,
Matt, best case for the Eagles.
I would still put it at like 15-2. I wouldn't say an undefeated season. I don't think we see that, given kind of the nature, especially if it's late in the season and they're resting players. 15-2 would be best case.
All right, Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I feel like my prediction kind of was my best case. I feel like that 13-4 was like a lot of optimism. I feel like maybe you go to 14-3.
Yeah.
For me, I don't see it like a run the table scenario. But that worst case scenario could get worse. I feel for the Eagles for that worst case scenario to spin worse for me. If we come out slow after the slow finish last year, if you were to lose like 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4 out of the chute, and people start to just question Sirianni, and it starts burning from my 9 and my 9 and 8 could fall out real fast. But I'll stick with what I said. But I think worst case is if it gets even worse than that.
let me ask you two down here a question, the Eagles fans here.
Yeah.
Is Sirianni on a sneaky little hot seat this year?
I don't think we know. I feel like I said, it's one of two things. I feel like either they sat down and said, okay, this is our guy. We saw a weakness below him, or, he may have had to fight his butt off to stay and said, look, if you let me get the guys that I want, or if we work together and get the guys we want, I could still be the guy. And so I think that's probably more realistic that they brought those guys in as like, well, now you don't have any excuses. Like, you're either going to figure out whether you need to lean on them or you're going to lead them. But yeah, I don't think they're going to necessarily fire him mid-season unless it goes with my worst case, 1-4, 1-5. If you come out of the gate like you finished last year, I think the hot seat gets a lot hotter.
Yeah.
So possibly, yes.
Matt?
Yeah, I don't think he should be, but I think that there's always kind of that mindset in Philly, especially with the media and the fans the way it is. It'll get louder if things get worse. So there might be some buzz around that. So I hate that you said sneaky hot seat, but is he on a seat that is a little warm? Yes.
A little bit. A little warm.
Slightly
warm. All right,
warmed up, buddy. Get warmed up.
Let's. You got to get all the catchphrase ready.
That's right.
Slightly over him saying slightly.
All right, we'll go around. Let's do the division standings prediction from bottom to top. I'll go in the same order the whole way around. We'll go Mike, EJ, Matt, Sean, and myself. Mike, who do you have at the bottom of the NFC East? And if you have a record for the teams, you can give that as well. But who do you have as last place?
The 4-13 Fighting Danny Dimes.
All right, EJ.
I have the Commanders at 6-11.
Wow. Okay, Matt.
I have the New York Football Giants at 3-14.
Okay, Sean.
Washington Commanders 3-14.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Now keep in mind, Jaden Daniels gonna look good. Rookie quarterback. I feel like some of those games he looks good. They're still gonna fall behind.
That's
I feel
right,
the
too, also.
organization's just go sputty. But shh.
That is a hot take.
Hot take alert.
He sat outside for too long.
I made it up 4 seconds ago.
Peyton Manning's rookie year, 3-13. So I mean,
Florida
hey.
Heat. My last place is the 5-12 New York Football Giants. Mike, your third place team in the NFC East.
The 10-7 Washington Commodores.
Mike, how much you pay Jason over here?
I didn't pay him
The
a dollar.
Commander's gonna surprise peeps.
I'm not even a Commanders fan.
That's rookie of the year right there. Probably if he gets 10 wins, that's rookie of the year.
I mean,
Well,
They're still
it
calling
depends,
league
it
MVP,
surprise
though.
enough for me. So
it depends on what
already
Caleb
surprised.
does. Depends on what Caleb does too, because
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be your rookie of the year race right there. Is Jaden and Caleb. EJ, who do you have in third place in the
I have
East?
the Giants at. Well, I want to say the Eagles, but no, the Giants at 7-10.
You crazy?
You could have. I mean, you've said dumber things already on this show.
Hey, I'm Matthew, I'm getting warmed up, buddy.
blink twice if you're in fear for your life inside of the stalker van.
Matt, who do you have in third in the East?
The 9-8 Washington Commanders.
Wow.
All right, Sean.
the 7-10 New York Giants.
There you go,
Right.
Sean.
In third, I have the 8-9 Washington Commanders. And remember where I picked the Cowboys. Those two teams, depending on a couple of bad breaks here or there, head-to-head matchups.
Are you talking about Week 18 being for a playoff spot potentially between these two teams?
So what you're saying is, Mike and Matt, is that this year Jaden Daniels, this year's CJ Stroud.
No, I'm saying Jaden Daniels is this year's Jaden Daniels.
Ooh,
I'm saying do what he did last year's rookie.
No, I think they're two completely different quarterbacks. I'm
not saying the narrative. I'm saying the style. I'm saying
just having a rookie.
No, I mean, I think they could
come in and
I think
Rookie
they could have a fine
QB, defensive-minded head coach. Yeah.
no, but in my prediction, Mike, I have Washington winning in the last week of the year.
Okay.
To go 8-9 because
Okay.
Dallas has already locked up the
playoffs,
wild card, or
okay.
Washington's already been eliminated or something.
My 3 is probably substantial. I'm just throwing that out there, but I think he's going to struggle. I think he's stepping in with a lot of talent into a division with a lot of good defensive schemes, and I think it's going to look good at times, but be rough for him. So I agree with you on Daniels. I went low.
All right, second place in the NFC East, Mike.
I will put the 11-6 Dallas Cowboys.
All right, EJ.
I also have 11-6 Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Matt.
The 10-7 Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Sean.
The 12-5 Dallas Cowboys.
Jason says Washington will beat Dallas this year. Yes, they probably will one time, and Dallas will beat them the other time. That's usually how that rivalry goes. I, of course, have my Dallas Cowboys at 9-8 in second place. And Mike, your number one team in the NFC East this year.
The 12-5 Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, EJ.
I have the 14-3 Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, Matt.
The 13-4 Philadelphia Eagles.
Sean.
Are you giving them 14 wins because your predictions barely come true?
He's giving them 14 wins, so he can do the same thing. he
Should
did
Trying
to
some
Cincinnati.
kind
Should I
of
blink twice for that?
DJ lunatic voodoo.
No,
working on me already.
if this roster stays healthy, who's beating them in that conference?
I'll stick with my 13-4 Philadelphia Eagles. But
Okay,
but
that's
EJ
fine,
has
that's fine.
14.
I mean, Saquon's healthy. That's a problem. So
Yeah, I also have the 13-4. Going to go puke. Philadelphia Eagles.
one game
Yes.
off. No big deal.
As number one in the division. All right, guys. Anything else to add to the show before we wrap it up?
I just want to throw my Eagles piece out there. That, obviously I took the successful, unsuccessful thing a slightly different route with how would it be and how would it. I think for the Eagles, if you're going to consider this a success, I'm kind of with Matt. If you're not in the NFC Championship game, at least, I think this is an utter disappointment. I don't think that getting to the playoffs is good enough for this team. And I think your worst case scenario is pretty much what I said. That if you're spinning out of the gate and you're faltering and you're all of a sudden 4 losses, 5 losses in the first half, I think that that's, so I think that NFC title game out of the chute is where the success line is. So I just wanted to add that.
Steve has in the comments here: Eagles 12-5, Cowboys 10-7, Washington 6-11.
Oh, come on, Steve.
And the Giants at 4-13.
No love.
Coming up a few dimes short.
Hey,
As the Philadelphia fans here, who do you guys want to play in the NFC title game? Since it's NFC title game or bust.
I could list a lot of teams I'd want to play, but of the ones that are probably going to be there, I don't know. Maybe somebody from the South makes a run. Give me the Buccaneers or something nonsense.
I mean, okay, like
Saints.
Let's.
Are you asking me if I want the 49ers or like another
49ers or Lions
or Packers?
Or Packers.
I'll give you the three. I'll give you those three.
Green Bay.
I would like them to face the Niners just to kind of put to bed all the back and forth of, well, if we had our quarterback and
that's what
we did in
that's the correct answer.
This regular season game, so it's completely justified that we would have won that NFC Championship game. And since Kyle's not here to roll his eyes and do the "but mad" thing, I will kind of
Homer.
I will say that I would like to have that 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
Niners,
shutting
Eagles.
Debo up again.
Yeah,
that'd be
that
nice.
would be just fine.
Yeah, Jason does ask. He says, "Can the Eagles beat Lions, Niners, or Packers?"
Yes, and yes.
Beat all
I
three.
say they can beat
Yes,
all
yes.
three. They can also
yes.
lose to all three.
Yeah.
But the Niners are clearly the scariest of those three.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I think
don't think
in
it's
that
close.
Agreed, but I don't think they separate themselves either this offseason. So therefore, they can be beaten.
I'm just really ready for the Brock Purdy experiment to finally show what like an average.
Well, I predicted it was going to fail
Purdy
last year, so I would love to just be 1 year early on that.
I don't know, it'll level off. It will level off now. I think it'll fail.
I don't think that the Niners are leaps and bounds ahead of the other two teams that were mentioned.
No,
I truly believe that the Detroit Lions will give anybody a run for their money, especially if the conversation that we had about an hour ago of Brandon Ayuk wanting out of San Francisco.
That may change.
Well, yeah, I mean those, and in Jason comments, he thinks the Lions are scary. Yeah, those
That's
sort of
right.
things. Again, it's when at least for me, I don't know how anybody else does it. When I do predictions like this, I do them as the paper tells me on whatever day we're doing them. So sitting here today, Brandon Ayuk, although once a trade out, is still a 49er. So if that changes after July 17th, 2024, that will dramatically alter
a lot of things.
The 49ers. And if he ends up in, Jason in the comments here says he's going to be a Cowboy. I mean, I would take him. I would absolutely take him in Dallas.
There's so many teams.
I don't see Jerry making that deal. But yeah, I mean, if he ends up in Washington, that could change predictions that we made on this show.
And consider right now too, also of those top teams in NFC, the Eagles are the only team that made a big splash, really. So,
yeah. But I think they had to.
Well, Saquon, I mean, that's a pretty big splash.
I say had to. I think that they were. They internally they felt they had to.
Jim, I think you're right because didn't Swift sign before Saquon did, and
correct.
They weren't going with
that is correct.
Gainwell and Boston.
They
Scott's
didn't pay him because
yes.
they knew they were going to give Saquon whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
And that's my honest opinion. Either they knew the number they were going to throw at Saquon, or they knew whatever he threw at them, they were going to go, okay. And I think that Swift won. Swift asked for almost. I think that's what happened. He came in and was like, if he'd have been like, I want a realistic deal, they'd have been like, oh, well, then you can be our guy. And they wouldn't have even signed Saquon. But I think when he went, I got this offer from Chicago, they were like, have a good time.
Yeah, have fun in Chicago.
Was 8.5 a year.
They were like, if we're going to spend that.
It was 8.5 for Swift and what, 12.5 for
Saquon can finally play for a contender. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And Saquon's a better player right now, even.
And the Giants apparently were mistreating him anyway, so whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen,
No,
before
I'm good.
we wrap up? All right, Sean, let them
Totally
know.
cool, man.
Oh, wait, shout out to the viewers today too. Also, nice viewer count.
Yeah, a lot of viewership. So make sure you are, like I said, make sure you're subscribed to all the Student of the Game stuff. Make sure you're subscribed to the Huddle Up YouTube and all of that, because we're about a month away. I don't have the
That's so
exact
cool.
date yet, but we're about a month away from our live season starting up. So get ready for more of this on a weekly basis. But Sean, let them know where they can find you. I know you don't spend a lot of time on Twitter down there, but let them know anyway.
Yeah, my kids are getting older. You know, the X profile may get some work this year. So if you want to find me for real, just come down to St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm down here. But if you're looking for me on the X, it's at Sean Shine State. And you know, until that live season starts going, just go Birds, and you know, we'll see you then. I'm excited.
All right, Matt, let them know where they can keep track and follow you.
Yep, you can listen to me on Tuesdays and Thursdays on the 3CT podcast. Twice begrudgingly a year on the Earnestly Speaking podcast. I join the Huddle Up podcast frequently enough, I would say. And then Kyle's Student of the Game once or twice a year as well. But you can follow me across all platforms at Teaching to the Choir.
All right, EJ, let them know.
Ernest Good Podcast, all podcast catchers. I'm on Twitter /X at EJChristian7. YouTube page, youtube.com/ErnestChristian. And that's it.
All right, Mikey B.
You can listen to me spew wrestling stuff with Jim on the Take 3 Wrestling podcast. You can listen to me talk about Mount Rushmores on the Mount right here on the Huddle Up stream. You can follow me on Twitter at They Call Me Bern, BERN. I will be here probably, I think, next week to talk NFC West with our good friend, the student of the game, Kyle Nash.
World
because
Traveler. Mike
What team are you covering? What team are you covering this time?
who aren't I covering?
I'm just curious. Okay.
He's just
All of
covering the
them.
NFC. All of them,
Nice.
except for the
Somehow-
Also,
somehow-
what members of the Washington secondary will be saying, "Who aren't I covering?"
You got you doing
Right.
homework, buddy.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. I'm just going to put together an NFC West super team that's going to go like 35-0, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Dope.
All right, you can follow me at Big Jim Sports, but make sure you are following along at Huddle Up Podcast on all podcast platforms, YouTube as well. Let's get our YouTube up subscriber count. We're nearing 100, so get that up and over 100 before the NFL season starts and our live season starts. We'd appreciate that. You can hit the link tree and all of the Huddle Up social media. That'll get you to our merchandise store. But as you see on the screen, we came and we took over the Student of the Game's house this week. So make sure you're following along with him. Kyle works super hard. We appreciate him trusting us to come into this house and take it over. So the Student of the Game podcast is across all platforms. Of course, he has the Duval Dive, the Black and Gold Banneret, all of those things that he will run down each and every week on the Huddle Up podcast this upcoming year. You can also follow him on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook as the at the SOTG and all of those places across the board. So again, thank you for tuning in. We will be back. We have a Huddle Up episode dropping on our feeds next week. We'll have a couple more off-season program stuff that we're looking to get recorded. And then, like I said, we're about a month away from the live season. So we look forward to it. We look forward to hanging out with you all year. And until next time, class dismissed.